Hi, welcome to the Outdoor Laboratory Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Capo, and in today's episode, we have a special guest, Lela Beer. So, Lela, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Normal Friday.
How has it been since GCS?
It's been a little bit of an adjustment. My degree is rather challenging and requires a lot of tests every week. It's not nearly as enjoyable and there's not nearly as many connections made between my classes. So I miss GCS, but I'm also glad to be focusing back on my degree.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy adjustment.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what they told us it would be. So let's get to know you a little bit more. What's your favorite landscape that you visited, or one of your favorite places?
Ooh.
In the whole outdoors.
Everywhere?
I guess all time. Maybe a place that you grew up at, place that you really call your favorite place to be.
I love the Jemez Mountains in New Mexico. I work at a summer camp there, and it's a very special place to be. I also really love skiing. So I am very fond of the Santa Fe Mountains where I grew up skiing, and the Kachina Peaks here in Flagstaff, which I got to know before GCS and got to learn more about in a different lens during the program, which made me appreciate and love my interaction with it a lot more.
Okay, cool. Now, you should mention that you did a camp.
Yeah.
So how about that outdoor leadership experience? How is that, being a counselor at camp?
I love it. It's a very fun job. You get paid to be a kid, but it's also really nice to be outside and to be with kids that, especially now, are outside less. So one of my favorite classes to teach is Bugs and Dirt, where you literally just walk around the camp area, and as someone who's a scientist, I can spew some facts about photosynthesis and this and that, but it's really cool to see kids interact with their environment and kind of get rid of some of the fears they have. So with really younger girls, sometimes spiders are a lot in the early cabins, but it's fun to kind of coach them out of it. But you also really get to teach these kids how to build character and push their limits. We have an overnight on Wednesdays, of which we go backpacking with these kids. Sometimes it's their first time in the woods, so they're really apprehensive, but if you're stoked on it, you can get your kids to be stoked on it. And it was really interesting to then be in that position in GCS and be one of the participants of the backpacking trip that didn't know the route, while at camp I'm the one coaching them up the hill. So it was really fun to kind of see both sides of that outdoor experience. I love it at camp. I think it was my first introduction to eco-psychology and nature-esque learning.
Yes, you just brought up the next thing that I wanted to bring up, eco-psychology.
Eco-psychology?
Eco-psychology. I got that little Hispanic accent. Eco-psychology. So what is eco-psychology, basically?
Eco-psychology is a newly studied form of psychology that focuses on how ecology influences the developmental and emotional stability of individuals. I first started this research senior year of high school for my senior thesis and learned about nature-based education, or experiential learning. And it was advocating outdoor education because you get to experience things, make more connections and things like that. But then this year, experiencing something similar to what I was advocating senior year, I wanted to delve more into it. And so I wanted to see the benefits, really what was some science arguing for this. And learning about eco-psychology, it was a new way of supporting outdoor education and getting younger kids to be outside, because it not only helps them emotionally just develop and handle the stresses that come with day to day, because they walk up a big hill that's really hard, and so then they know that they can be done with that math problem. Yes, it's just as hard, but in a different way. So it gives little kids that grit, but it's still something that you can learn throughout your whole life. On my backpacking trip, that was really hard, but now when I bike home or I'm working on something really hard in a class, I can just think back to the Grand Canyon trying to hike out of that and just how challenging that was, but how it helped me overcome things later. And eco-psychology is just this really awesome new form of scientific support for a change within the education system and how students are being currently taught.
So, like, I remember you saying that you did this as a history. I mean, you did this in your senior year of high school.
Yes.
So did you go to a high school that was like experiential education based?
Yes. So my school, our science programs were super outdoorsy. We lived right on a watershed of New Mexico, like the biggest watershed in New Mexico called the Rio Grande. And so we would literally walk out in our science classes, do small mammal trapping, where little 12-year-olds were actually like looking and measuring mice and their tails and their ears and all that good stuff. We looked at leaf litter bins and just foliage droppings and all these interesting natural science aspects of school location. And so my science programs were super hands-on, outdoorsy, but my liberal arts classes were the other end of experiential ed, and they had discussion-based classrooms, which was a lot of where the teacher doesn't necessarily run the discussion. Students can just talk to each other and reflect on what they learned and their individual experiences, and then hearing from each other, they developed a greater understanding of that area because you're able to talk to all the kiddos in the classroom. And
But I think you're touching on something that like a lot of people don't realize about outdoor education or outdoor recreation things is that there is a debrief, like a time to discuss.
Absolutely.
You know? Like it's not just all outside and having fun, because there's people who are like hating on this experiential education because it's an outdoor based thing, that they don't feel like you're in a classroom doing the traditional thing of repetition or something like that.
Yeah, I just think the type of education where you're outside experiencing it for yourself and then going back and comparing it to other people, you gain more out of that because you make more connections.
There's always a place for
rather than being in a classroom and having a teacher tell you about an experience that you have no connection to. It's not going to stick with you as well. And plus, you're going to just love being outside more, like getting your heart rate up and just like having those endorphins while you're learning. You're going to retain it more. Like they tell you on my chemistry homework that as I keep getting things wrong, to go take a break, go like exercise a little bit and come back. Like being outside, being active is good for you, especially when learning.
Yeah, I remember in your paper you even touched on like ADHD, students with ADHD. This was like a great way to help them.
Yeah, they don't want to sit in a classroom and be still. That is the last thing that they're going to be good at. And so now we've come to an issue of having overprescribed children with Ritalin and all these other ADHD meds when they could literally be outside, be playing with a stick, but still listening to you and hearing it. And that was something that I kind of learned at my camp. My first year, my bosses during our adjustment to camp as a counselor, we talk about behavioral issues with students, or with campers, and how we can adjust to them. And some of the things we have to do early on in the week is like go over rules and just cabin rules and general camp rules, like not wearing open-toed shoes just because there's old nails on like property, but they can be really boring to do. So you need to recognize that if you're with kids, like they're gonna play a little bit, but they're still gonna listen to you, and it's better than just being bored out of their mind.
Yeah, I think after a long day of like hiking, they wanna just focus.
Exactly.
Or like they're just too tired to be everywhere.
Exactly.
So after reading your presentation and like your whole paper, I assume that you're super passionate about outdoor education and experiential education. So why? Like, what is it about this thing that makes you more passionate than, say, the average person?
Because of my personal privilege with my previous education, I was exposed to this form of education when I was 12 years old, and I've had that up until now. All of this education is based on discussion-based classrooms. I'm always kind of the kid that like over participates in the classes, did the reading and wants to talk about it and learn from it. And so I'm just someone that really clicks with this type of education. I am an advocate for it because it really benefited me, and I think that it can benefit those that the system is not helping currently. But I also recognize that hands-on learning isn't for everyone. Sometimes people like just listening, and so I'm not necessarily proposing a complete 100% shift, because sometimes you do need to read a book a little bit just to get a understanding of the area that you're going to go to, and then you'll make more connections off of that. But I just love how much more I retain information and enjoy learning it because of the experiences I'm having. I'm in classes that I'm just fed information all the time. I just dump that information really quickly after tests, while I still remember a lot of what we talked about in GCS, just because there was that person-place connection that made me reflect back on my readings and really fulfill all that I could from that topic. So I just think it's the best way of learning, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people could benefit from it.
That's awesome. So is there anyone in your life that you think actually jump-started you into like an outdoor place of that being a hobby?
My dad. My dad has taught me pretty much everything I know about being outside. I remember going camping when I was really, really little. I still believed in fairies at the time and made like forest fairy houses. And I loved camping. I didn't really like hiking when I was younger. I thought that was just pointless. But then kind of being in school for a little bit, elementary school, and then in middle school, just kind of going through the grind, I missed being outside. I liked skiing the most. That was probably something that I did the most that kept me outside. But then in high school, I had a friend of mine just tell me about the camp, and then going to camp on my own and just re-experiencing being outside and doing like strenuous physical activity like backpacking. I fell in love with it on my own, but then fondly remembered my dad teaching me all of this stuff, and then I proceeded to join search and rescue, which my dad used to do, and I could just see him like glowing with pride that I was doing that. But ski patrol and the other like medical things I'm a part of were things that I chose, but I now recognize I chose because of the experiential aspects of the degree. Because in my degree I have to take so many labs, and that is doing experiments and really messing with the concepts that you're learning in your lecture. So I just feel like my education, my dad, my friends have all kind of influenced me to be where I am now and seek the education that I seek.
Yeah, because you're a ski patrol. Like, that's pretty awesome, you know? So how about that? How does someone become a part of Snowball Ski Patrol? Like, what did you have to do, you know?
So I'm an EMT. You can be a woofer to be at Snowball. But at most other ski resorts, I know the minimum certification is being an EMT. And you just have to be a very proficient skier, and I think kind of really into nature. I think it's the best job ever because I get to literally ski all day, and that's my favorite sport. I chose ski patrol because it was a combination of being outside and still doing something that I love, and that is something just like camp. Like, I love being outside, but I also love working with kids, and so it was just seemed like the best job for me and my interests and how it would help me with my graduate school applications and such. But I think anyone could do ski patrol if they wanted to. You just gotta, first of all, like, probably enjoy medicine because you're treating people all day, but also be into being outside and testing your body a little bit.
So I remember we talked about camp and stuff like that. I just had an episode come out where we talked about the participants and their role, and I guess dealing with children can be a little difficult. And I remember there's 3 different types of participants when it comes to an outdoor role, and it's opposer, follower, and a bystander. And so I'm pretty sure that you've had to deal with some opposers at your camp. How would an outdoor leader effectively get the participants to get them to follow their example? How do you get your students or your campers whenever they're wanting?
Kids?
Yeah, your kids whenever they want to feel a rambunctious.
So my boss always says that like you never have bad kids, you have a bad counselor. And it's because in the beginning of the week you really need to like set it off that you're here to have as much fun as possible while keeping them safe. Like you always want to ensure that, because sometimes it's hard for them to be away from home for a week. But so having a lot of energy with working with kids is definitely necessary, because you need to be like up here when your campers are a lot lower. So first of all, starting like that and just being stoked on literally everything that you're doing in a day really helps kids doing it. But when you're with like the 14-year-olds, the like preteens, they're angsty, they don't really care.
Yeah.
It's even more enjoyable to be over the top, because you'll get them eventually. And if you can just like also make fun of yourself, be like, dude, like you're too cool for me, like what is it? I'm like twice your age, like I'm having fun, you can have fun too, like let loose. But there's also a lot of campers there that like love it and have been there forever, because that's their time when they can be weird, like get dirty and make tie-dye and do weird things. And you can always eventually get the ones that are kind of opposed to it to crack like midway through the week, and then you can see your whole cabin just have a fantastic time. So it's kind of playing it by ear and just being thankful and happy for the job that is there, because if you're not there for the kids, like you're not going to have a good time, the kids are not going to have a good time. And I have seen counselors like that. But then I've only really had one bad camper, and it was pretty much due to at-home issues. And I think recognizing that every individual has their own unique experience and their own unique story and something that shapes them to who they are, you really have to have patience and kindness and love in your heart for them, because this specific camper was my hardest camper to date. I've been a camp counselor for 5 years. This is like the only one I've really had an issue with. And every day he would linger away from the group, and we would always have to keep coaching him. But we never raised our voice. I was the senior counselor at the time, and I was like spoke to my co-counselors, like, we're not gonna raise our voice, we're gonna be patient with this guy, like be as nice to him as possible, because camp can be a safe place for people. And at the end of the week, I do a devotion in which we all go around and say like our favorite things of that week, or what we're gonna miss the most before we go home. And this kid who was like our problem camper that whole week was like, I want to thank you guys for being so nice to me this week, because I know that you love me. And me and my co-counselor like looked at each other and like almost started crying, because he validated us. You might not get that validation all the time, but knowing that you can make that difference really is empowering. And I think leaders need to recognize that and just like stay true to their goal in why they're there.
That was actually a really good answer. So let's talk about the Grand Canyon semester. The awesome semester offered at NAU for the low price of $9,000.
It's cheaper than the
It's cheaper. Yeah, it's good. It's so worth it. It's the best money you ever spent. Honestly, the Grand Canyon semester was such an awesome experience, you know. And I want to know, what was your favorite education trip that we went on?
Definitely rafting the Grand Canyon. That was awesome. My mom rafted the Grand Canyon when I was in elementary school, and she was gone for like a month. Like she was on one of those like 90-day trip ones. And I was always like, that's on my bucket list, I'm gonna do that. And I remember one time we went rafting in Santa Fe, and that was pretty fun. It was like some mellow rapids. But then being on a paddle boat, not just being chauffeured around, but by actively being a part of the rapids and like paddling and like getting rocked and like holding on, while my boss, who ended up being the trip leader, like behind us, like left, right. That was just like so thrilling and fun, and it was just an experience like no other, because we had learned about water and how important it was to the Southwest, how our reservoirs are near empty and no one knows about it, and we're continuing to increase population in Phoenix and other
California
areas.
Doesn't get any restrictions.
Yeah, and like the just water laws, and just learning about how crazy that was and how we're damming it and destroying this ecosystem, and just learning all of that, and then being there in like this huge river still, like it is still like massive from side to side. It's still like super deep, and you're just engulfed in this ditch in the middle of the desert where the stars are the clearest you'll ever see anywhere, because Arizona, Flagstaff, #1 place for stars. It was just like no other experience, and really just was the thing I was looking most forward to in the semester, and it met and exceeded my expectations.
What was your favorite stop that we had?
I liked the rapids the most.
The rapids.
So that was like, I just liked the rapids. So like the first 2 days were my favorite. Like I didn't really like when we were just like mellowly basking there as much. Like it was definitely really fun to just be lazy, enjoy the river, and jump into the super cold water and get back out. But just the rapids were so fun. But the stop I liked the most, I think, was Separation Canyon, where the little frogs are everywhere. Like there were just little baby frogs, and I enjoyed that the most at the campsite. And I think it was one of the flatter campsites, so it wasn't as overgrown with tamarisk, and there weren't as many red ants. So.
Yeah, I thought about that spot too, Separation Canyon. I think it was my favorite part because of like the history that's there.
Yeah, that was also really cool.
That was so cool. They never know where they live. Yeah, it was super cool to like be in that place.
I also loved how Derek knew so much history about the canyon and how he told the story of it, because he would have these fun stories and history and geological knowledge of the canyon, and then he would go off on the cool like, and they left and they never came back, like the great John Wesley Powell. And I just loved that. It just added to the experience, especially because he was my boss, and it was cool seeing him in a different light.
Yeah, I felt like he was John Wesley Powell first.
Right? I was just like, Derek, damn.
So we also had a hiking trip. What was your favorite part of that trip?
I liked all of it. So my group, the first day,
I think we were in the same group, right? Yeah. Yeah, we were in the same group. Yeah, we were.
Sorry, but we hung out and just like basked for a little bit on like the first few days, and that was really nice. I just like, it was just so cool to just be in the canyon, being like, we are really isolated right now. Like no one can really get us.
We're like in a little oasis.
Yeah, it really was. Like, we had that little spring, and it was super nice. But I also liked on the last day, just like walking around the mesa and just seeing how much the canyon changed, like so quickly. Like we saw this one beautiful view of just all these different jagged rocks. Then as we walked around, we could see the river like really close from above. So it was right above that Vishnu schist stuff, which I was just like, whoa, like from the rim you don't get to see that far. So it was experiencing the canyon in a different way while being like in the middle of it was really cool, and to see the river and walk around it, and as it was raining, being kind of on the edge and like having a little bit of thrill with that was really fun. And I liked the being in the middle of it. I didn't really like hiking down because like the last hour was just sketchy scree.
Yeah.
And then on the hike out, recovering from a cold and not being great with heights wasn't the best combination.
Actually, I remember you didn't have a good time. No, you were not having a good time. I remember.
Yeah, because I couldn't breathe because I was recovering from a cold and I have asthma, so like it's just challenging. And then you're just hiking up for 5 hours. But then like Claire and I bonded a little bit over, like they didn't really mentally prep us that we were gonna be like, it was literally like a Cat 4 hike because you had all four, like, because you have this heavy backpack.
Yeah, tell me about it. I had a 50-pound pack. Tell me about it.
You had to put all your hands in on your, like, all four parts of you, like, on it, and you look over and sudden death. And you're just like, oh my god.
You took your bag the wrong way.
Dude, right, it was a little windy, and I like do not like heights. I'm okay when I'm strapped in and I like know the belayer and I know the knots and stuff. I'm okay with that. But that was just like sketchy. They didn't warn me. I couldn't breathe. It was intense.
I don't know if I told you.
But I learned so much from it.
Yeah, I learned a lot from it.
I felt like a badass at the end of it.
You know those wooden parts that were like at the top?
Yeah, those freaking rickety
I don't know if I
chairs.
told anyone. I don't know what I've told anyone, but I was walking on those, and as soon as my leg touched it, I cramped on one leg, and then I cramped on the other leg too. Your boy was just there, debilitated. It was not fun.
Yeah. It was just like gnarly hiking out because
that hike was.
Because I love hiking, but it was just a whole new game.
I saw a picture of what we did. Like I was like, dang, that was.
Well, because it's fall summit after fall summit, like you're gonna get up when you get up.
Yeah, you don't know where you just gotta keep going. It's horrible, but it's the best time.
But it's like grit. It's character building for adults. Because like as a camper at my little camp, like you go on like a 2 mile, the 2 mile hike is the longest one, and it's hard for the kids. But the counselor's like, oh sweet, like we're chilling. But it was cool being challenged at that physical level and being able to accomplish it. It was just cool receiving what camp always gives to kids and experiencing like an adult camp at GCS.
So, if someone would be considering going to GCS, what would you tell them?
It will be the best thing you do in college. I still think that. And I am someone who does a lot of extracurriculars. And I think that GCS it was actually the main reason I chose NAU. I was invited to the Explore Honors Day. NAU wasn't really on my radar for schools, but I came here, got a tour of the campus. Obviously Flagstaff's beautiful. It's like an undiscovered ski town that is still cheap relatively compared to like Telluride. And Honors was mentioning GCS, this program that I was an advocate for experiential education that I was currently researching senior year. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that program. And it was exactly what you should do if you are from the Southwest and live on the Colorado Plateau. Like I'm from Albuquerque, I'm on the eastern edge of the Colorado Plateau. And I know how big this ecosystem was and how biodiverse this particular ecosystem in the desert region is, but it's also made me so sad to see just how at threat and how this is like one of the first regions to be seriously damaged by it, with water being so scarce. And it was just like really eye-opening to fall in love with the area that I grew up in a whole new way, but also just really getting what I could out of my education.
Yeah.
Like first off, it was cheaper than my typical tuition, so like there's a financial incentive to do it, but the experience that you get from it, like only 16 kids or 15 kids got to raft the Grand Canyon. Yeah. I literally get a GCS scientist to come on board and talk about their scientific research in the middle of the Grand Canyon while floating on some boats. Like that is unlike any other education that you're gonna get, and I'm so thankful that I got it because it was just awesome, and I feel like I really got what I could out of NAU. I could have done a biomedical degree anywhere, but you can't do GCS anywhere.
You also brought up that Flagstaff is a beautiful place to be. What has Flagstaff done for you?
Oh.
Like, what has it brought? What do you think it could bring someone? Because I think it could bring so many things. It's such an amazing place.
I think if Flagstaff is right for you, you're gonna know. You're gonna come in, you're gonna like feel the vibe, you're like, this is pretty sweet. And you're only gonna know that if you get off the 66 and the highway. Like if you really go to downtown, or you really go to Snowball, or you really go to the areas that make Flagstaff cool, you're gonna fall in love with it and love the quaintness of it. I like how small it is. I came from like a big-ish city. You came from a much bigger one than me. But it's a small town in which everyone loves being outside, and there's just a calmness here, and I just love it. It's just like I love it a lot more than my other city. It's untapped, and it's amongst the most beautiful trees ever. The ponderosa pine, I love them to death. I love alpine, as that's my favorite ecosystem elevation layer, and because I love skiing and just being around here, being a part of ski patrol, search and rescue, like having really launched my career path and my education and just the experience. Everything has fallen into place coming to Flagstaff, and I'm very happy for that and thankful to have experienced this cute little town.
Well, I think that's all the questions I had for you, but experiential education is something that's taking off, and something that I think is actually the new wave of education.
Totally.
And I think that it's important that people know that now, because it's gonna be a pretty awesome thing to have your kid outside. Like you had an awesome education from what I hear. Like that's pretty remarkable to have just measure mice,
Yeah, I definitely think I got the most I could out of the education. Maybe I'm not the best test taker, but I don't think that is the true measurement of knowledge.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think
And it
education
sucks
is,
that our society thinks that.
yeah, education has been, I think, to make workers instead of leaders, and I think that's
Yeah,
what
and
it's-
there's just so much disconnect
Mhm.
from nature, and that experiential outdoor education is going to reconnect people with the land and really just fix some of the issues that we have let get way out of control due to greed and just ignorance and just people turning a blind eye. And our kids, people have said that our generation is going to fix it, but really, like, our kids are also going to continue to fix it, and we need to give them the next best shot. Like, I feel
Yeah.
we're gotta solve some big problems, and I think we can step up to that, but we need to give those tools and better tools to our next of kin.
Yeah, I think we covered in GCS is like this duality that we think we have with nature, and in fact, like
We're in it.
We're in it right now.
Psychology
Yeah.
recognizes that you're amongst
we're
the
in it right now.
ecosystem. We are
Yeah.
not apex beings. We are in it,
Yeah, I
and
think
we are affected by it, and we need to recognize that.
Aldo Leopold has like a famous saying thinking like a mountain, and it's basically like considering every aspect of your environment as like a thing that has value.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like a very important thing that we don't have nowadays, because we're all up in our cubicle, we're all up where I'm at washing dishes, like we're just not in nature constantly because we're just so disconnected. So I think experiential education is important, and I'm glad that there's people like you who are advocates for it. And I hope all the viewers become advocates for it too. Well, I think that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening to the Outdoor Laboratory podcast. Go out and experience it for yourself.